Hey everyone, it's Paul from Alexander Knife Sharpening and Laser Engraving. So today I wanted to give you a quick example of something I talked about the other week. I did a video on the review of the Commarker B6, and I talked about how it might be more useful if you're considering getting your first laser to not just buy into, getting a can do everything kind of laser that has a blue laser built in and a fiber laser built in, because in my experience, I have found that you might be better off, at least in my situation, I was better off with a dedicated laser for those specific jobs. And I have a perfect example of it, and I wanted to share that with you guys. So I just got this job in the other day, and I want to show you the whole kind of transaction of the thing here. So a person wrote me and said, hey, can you give me an estimate on a 14 by 11 panel with a Lego figure silhouette cut out of it? So that's what they wanted. They wanted this little Lego guy. And I said, okay, yeah, let me see. Do and I had questions for him. Do you know what you want it made out of? What kind of wood? What are we cutting? Is it fiberboard? Is it, acrylic? What's your idea here? And they weren't really sure. They were like, I said, well, how about like 3 millimeter bass plywood? That's what a lot of people use for crafts and projects. So they sent me the picture of what they wanted to make. And I sent them the picture of, well, this is what 3 millimeter bass plywood looks like. And I went back and I kind of looked at the design. Now, the one thing I noticed was you can see this design is all little pieces. It's not one big giant silhouette. So I wrote them back and I said, hey, do you want it cut out like the design you sent me, or do you want one big silhouette? And they basically didn't care, but they said, if it's easier to do one big cut, that's totally fine. They didn't really have a preference either way on that. Now, what I want to show you is also how things like this can be very profitable for you. And sometimes one or two jobs can literally pay for your material. So let's just quickly jump over here to Amazon. And yeah, so here is the exact wood that I bought. And it's $58.99 for 15 pieces of 12 by 24. 1/8 inch is the same as 3 millimeter plywood. So that's what I'm going to use for this project. And I'm going to be using one piece unless there's, some mistakes or anything there. And you can see this cost me $58.99 for these 15 pieces. In discussions, we'll go back to my client here. They asked me how much I would charge for that. I told them that I would do it for $35. They said that was great. And I said, okay, could you just go to my website and put the order in, which they did. They went over to the my website and put the order in. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of this plywood. I'm going to put it in my xTool S1 40-watt laser, which is great for cutting things. And then we will get this whole project knocked out and move on to other knife sharpening and things that I got going on here today. But what I wanted to show you also is why having two different lasers for something like this is perfect. Now, my xTool F1 Ultra, which I absolutely love, and this isn't any kind of knock on it, can cut wood, but it can't cut a piece this big. And that's why I had mentioned before in that other video that having a bed style laser for certain things is really useful. And I just don't love, the other reason I don't love cutting wood sometimes in my F1 Ultra is it doesn't have air assist, and it's just not, in my opinion, the most perfect thing for cutting wood. So can it cut wood? Yes. Can it do very cool things with the blue laser it has? Yes. But is it the best choice for cutting wood? That I would say no. That's where I think the xTool 40-watt definitely shines. It is just fantastic for cutting. So let me show you that project and we'll move on from here. All right, a couple things I wanted to point out to you when you are buying plywood from places like Amazon. They are not all of the same quality. You do want to look for good ones. I would say here's a couple things that I like to see from wood when I get it from Amazon, and I have lots and lots of wood up there. Sometimes you get pieces and they're terribly warped. They're not packed well, but here's a couple things that always help. One, you can see this box. There are individually, not every piece, but they're wrapped in sections. So we have several pieces in here that are wrapped in plastic. Definitely keeps the moisture down and keeps your wood from warping. Let's see if I can get one of these out here. Okay, there you go. This set here is wrapped really nice. And it's also been packed really well with foam so it doesn't dent, doesn't bang, and just does not get, messed up while you're waiting to use it. I would always kind of look at the reviews. This one that I buy from for these bigger pieces, which I have used to make jigs and things from, so I like to keep some of these big boards around, are very useful. And that's one of the reasons why I also like to look for these things that I know that I want to see in the packaging. So wrapped in plastic, great, helps keep the moisture down until you're ready to use it, and well packed, not dented, not smashed up, because let's face it, if you get a bunch of boards, but half of them are unusable, that's not doing you a whole lot of good. Just a couple tips on buying wood from Amazon. They are not all the same, and sometimes going with the cheapest isn't the best idea, especially if they don't have good reviews. I would avoid those because the wood is probably, one, not packed well, and could be very warped and things like that. Alrighty, so here is my xTool S1 40 watt laser, and I'll just show you. You can see that big giant bed that it has. I'm going to turn it on. So the honeycomb grid that's in here measures 20 by 14. Now it can cut even bigger pieces, but you have to use what's called a pass-through, or if you had to have something hanging out, you can open these doors on the front, and there's doors in the back to do that as well. But fortunately, this piece should fit right in here. Just big enough. It is exactly about the maximum length that this can cut going, left to right. Now, also keep in mind, the piece we're cutting is going to be smaller. So we're going to cut out from this our dimensions of the piece that they sent us. So this is a lot bigger than what they need, and we will be cutting it out from this big piece. All right, so out of this, we are going to be cutting a 14 by 11 panel, which I believe we are at 14 wide, but I got to check it to see if we have to trim some of that off, because they are not, some of the wood that you get also is not always exactly exact. Just warn you about that up front too. And that's one thing I always check. And this is 12 wide, so no problem. We just have to, we'll be taking an inch or half an inch off of each side. And yeah, we are 24. Yeah, so this is exactly as advertised. I mean, it is spot on. Spot on. Which is nice to see, because a lot of times, yeah, I mean, that is, so that's that's great too. It's nice to see that when you order wood and it comes exactly the correct size, because that does not always happen. I'm going to unpack this. I'm going to pick out a nice piece from here to use, and we'll get started. So this looks like a pretty nice piece to me. I think I'm going to go with this one. Let's get this in the machine, and then we'll start setting it up to do our cutting and our design. Okay, the one thing I want to talk to you real quick about before we get started and just start cutting away here is a thing called Kerf. If you haven't heard of Kerf or don't know what Kerf is, when a laser cuts, especially this is talking lasers that are cutting lasers, the amount of material that the laser removes, and in actuality, it's not a perfectly straight beam. It's actually a beam that it's conical. It angles down and then it kind of angles out again. that area where it removes is your kerf. So think about it. If you have a 1-inch square and you set it up to cut a 1-inch square, if it's cutting at exactly that 1-inch line, you're going to be a little short because you have to think about what we call that kerf, where the laser just vaporized and took away a part of that 1-inch square. So what Kerf does when you set it in your laser software, it compensates and it kind of moves everything over just a little bit because it knows the laser is going to burn away this much material. So I need to compensate a little bit to make sure that I get my 1-inch square. Now, and that's a way you can test for kerf too. If you want to get your exact machine's kerf setting, and it can vary even between materials. So your kerf for acrylic might be different than your kerf for plywood. You might want to run tests on that. And basically, you could cut out several 1-inch squares, measure them length and width-wise to see how much material is being cut away. And then you would subtract that amount from that 1 inch and then divide it in 2. And that divided by 2 number is going to be your kerf. You can also look it up a lot of times, which is what I've done in the past. I know the kerf for my 40-watt laser for 3mm plywood is generally, I believe it's 0.008 millimeters. If you need absolutely exact precision, then I would do your own kerf testing for your material to make sure that you're where you want to be. But just know, yes, that cutting away material, if you don't compensate for that, you're going to be a little bit on the short side because of what we call kerf. All right, so let's go back to the computer. All righty, so we are back at my computer. I have xTool Creative Space software opened up. We are going to start setting up this project. So the first thing I want to do is I want to set the dimensions of my cut line. We are currently in millimeters. They sent it to me that they wanted this to be 14 by 11. So I'm going to change this over to English for a second. If, you know, one of the things we deal with over here a lot is we actually in the US use metric for some stuff, and we use our old English measurement system for other stuff. But you simply can come in here in the settings, and all you got to do is click right over to inches. No big deal. Close it out. And now it is set for inches. And I can go back to metric at the same time if I just want to see that. But I'm going to come up here and I'm going to go my 14. I forgot to unlock up here. So it completely adjusted it. So I'm going to unlock this. All right, here we go. Yeah, I was going to say that shouldn't have happened. I'm going to go 14 wide by 11 high. And there's our 14 by 11 panel. And that should totally fit in there. Yeah. And we're good. All right. So this is what this is our cutout panel of our piece. And you can see we're looking at our entire, and this is our entire work bed area. And this is showing me where the laser's at right now. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a couple things here real quick. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark my workpiece, and I'm going to come up here and I'm going to tell it we're processing on a flat. This is a flat piece, so it's none of these things. It's not curved or anything. So we're going to go flat. And then I come over here, and this is where I mark my processing area. And this is very simple. I've simply clicked this. We are doing a rectangle. So we're going to click rectangle. And I hit start marking, and now I go over to my machine. All right, so now I'm over at the machine, and all I have to do is take a measurement from 2 corners, and it will give me a rectangle that's the size of this square. Now you'll see I can't go any further than where I'm currently at. I am at the end of this piece. Now, let's see how far I can come this way. I might have to adjust my wood. Yeah, so if I move my wood down some, I'm going to be able to get a better area of where I can cut. So I'm going to undo these magnets here, and I'm just going to move this down a little bit. And this is where Very strong magnets can be helpful. I do have a couple magnets here. I'm just going to put that right there. And I'm going to get 2 more flat magnets. The amount of magnets I use in my shop is just staggering. I use magnets for a lot of things when it comes to laser engraving. And they make all kinds of cool hold down magnets, but sometimes just a plain old regular rare earth magnet is all you need. But yeah, having a multitude of just options when it comes to setting things up, different kinds of magnets, different things never hurts. All right, so that's good. That board is nice and held down, which gives you also a nice consistent measurement on your cuts. So I'm going to go there, and I'm going to come as far over down here as I can, staying within my honeycomb grid. All right, and now I'm going to shut this, and we're going to go back to the computer, and I'll show you what that did for me on the computer. All right, so I'm going to hit end marking, and you'll see now that's my giant piece of wood in here. It gave me an outline, and this is my work area inside. So I can cut anywhere as long as I'm staying within that white area, it will cut out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this up right on the one edge. I'm going to try and save a little bit of wood, not a ton, 14 by 11, out of that piece of wood. And that's what our blue box up here is. So this is showing our reference. Now, I want to also make sure that I'm using the best settings. So one very cool thing about xTool is you can come up here and search for recommended settings for different types of things. So this is 3mm bass plywood. It is this one right here. And I can click on it, and now it is set for 3mm bass plywood. So if I come in here and I tell, you can see it gives me a little picture. Now we are cutting, so we're going to go to cut. And now it's showing me the settings for cutting. And its recommended settings for cutting is 100% power at 15 speed, 1 pass. Now, what are these here? Here's the kerf I told you about. So if we want it to be just right, we want to make sure that we adjust for that kerf. I know that the one for mine should be 0.2 millimeters if it is a millimeter setting. So I can come here and we're going to go to 0.2. The wood, it drops the focus beam down and it gives you less charring marks on your wood. And this is something that you cannot do when I talked about why I like this machine more for cutting wood over my F1 Ultra is a couple reasons. One, this has air assist, so air blows through that cutting nozzle. And 2, it can also compensate for kerf, which I can't do on my fiber laser. So we're going to lower the focus also, and it's saying it's going to do 3mm. So now we're good with that. So now we have all that set, but we still have to do one more thing because that's only going to cut out the size piece that we need. We also have to bring in our artwork, right? And I am going to bring in our artwork. Here's the SVG of the brick silhouette Lego guy. And I'm going to click open. I'm going to tell it to scale it to fit on my canvas. Now, I also am going to have to turn my little guy here. And I can do that this way. And it'll hit a point where it just locks. And then you'll see here, it gives me very nice little arrows showing me that this right here is centered within this piece. That's a little bit bigger than I want this guy. I think I'm going to shrink him down some. I want to leave about, I'm going to say maybe 2 to 3 inches up top. and see how that looks. So he is centered again there. So this is giving me an 11.3 by 7.3 inch man out of my board. Now, the next thing I want to do is, again, I want to tell this that this is a cut. So I'm going to change this to cut, and you'll see it now took all the insides away because it knows, oh, I'm cutting this shape out. I am not filling it in. It is not an engraving. It is a cut. Kerf offset for cutting the guy, that doesn't matter. Not at all. We will go with the lower focus here because we do not want to burn the top of the wood, or we want as little charring as possible. So that's good. And that is our simple little setup for our piece. The next thing I can do is I can click what's called framing. And framing is going to draw for me on the piece of wood with the laser where it is cutting. We want to come up here, and by clicking this, it's going to measure the thickness of my piece. I forgot to do this. It's very important. So right now we're just measuring the thickness of our material, and you'll see up here, it's going to give us the thickness. All right, so now we're measured. All right, so now what I'm going to do, I want to see how big this inside piece is going to be. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go here. I'm going to turn the output off on that. I'm going to go back to my inner piece, and I want to frame that. So I want to see this little guy. So now when I click on my frame button, it should show me that inside piece. So here's our little guy, and it's showing me, I'm going to cut him out right here. Okay, and that looked good. All right, so now I'm going to shut this. Over here, I have a fan, additional fan. Now this has a built-in fan, but I have additional inline fan, which is just going to help take the smoke out of the inside of the laser. So it does have a fan back here, but it has an even bigger fan over there that's helping pull it through the hose and out the window for the cutting process. It should cut the inner guy first, and then it's going to cut the outer part second. I hit process, and it's telling me it's going to take 1 minute and 48 seconds to cut the inside piece, and I got to remember to turn our outside piece back on. Okay, and now it's saying to cut this entire thing, it's going to be 3 minutes and 15 seconds. And I'm going to click start, and now all I have to do is go over and hit the start button on the laser, and you will see it will start cutting. So here's my start button. I hit this, and we are underway. And this is pretty cool to watch. And you can see it's cutting our little guy out. And if you look in the back, you'll see all the smoke just shooting out the back. But because of that inline fan, I have very good ventilation in here, and it sucks like almost all of that out. But you can see it's doing a nice job of cutting him out. It's not burning the wood. That looks really good. I'm very happy with that so far. And when you see that smoke pouring out the backside too, that's usually a pretty good indication that you've gotten all the way through. You can see he even popped up a little bit there. His legs are up. And that is cutting nice and clean all the way through those boards. It actually smells really nice when the laser cuts too, if you like the smell of wood burning. My wife always says, oh, I love when you're working with wood. It smells so good when I do like wood coasters and different things with wood. Especially some of the hardwoods really smell good. But even the plywood smells great. Alrighty, and it's all done. And it looks like we got a clean, nice clean cut. There he is. And there is our Lego man. So I just want to show you a quick correction that I'm going to make here. So you can see this is really thin. They left this little gap for his arm. My concern is how tiny this, you can see how tiny that piece is. We have a couple options here. We can just take this out, is what I think I'm going to do to make some adjustments there, because I don't want this little thin piece that's going to break off. And I'm just going to adjust the design of this just a tiny bit to compensate for that. I'm either going to thicken this up or I'm going to completely take it out. I'm going to actually recut this. All right, so I'm setting up to do a second one of these only because I didn't like the design. And these things will happen too. You have to look at those and figure these things might happen. I don't like this little thin piece. I'm afraid that might break off. I know this is a thing that they're going to be dropping Legos behind, but I want to see if I can just make the design a little bit bigger by, I think I'm going to just thicken this area up. Might be the best option rather than take it out, because I don't want to change the look too much. I do like how that, silhouette looks. So let's see what we can do. A little bit of cost loss here, because yes, I'm going to have to cut a second Lego guy out, but let's see what we can do here to improve this design. So the first thing I'm going to do here is go back to my cut shape guy, and I want to come in real close here. All right, so this here is the one thing I don't like. I don't like that this is just too close for the beam. So what kind of stuff could we do here? Well, if we double click, you can see I can adjust these nodes. And here's a couple options we could do here. I could pull this out a little bit, would be an option. So if I take this one here and maybe bring him out a little bit here and then kind of adjust these guys, you'll see I'm going to get an even bigger cut there. So instead of having that little sliver, this should give the laser a little bit more room to leave a little bit more wood. That's my goal. I just want to leave a little bit more wood there than we were getting. So that's all I'm doing. I'm adjusting these little nodes in that cut design over a little bit so that the laser's not really kind of going down and back. It was basically kind of using almost that same line is kind of what was going on there. And by doing this, we're just giving it a little bit more room. And I think that's going to give us a little bit nicer final outcome. Yeah. And I'm liking that. I just want to see if I can I get this right here over just a tiny bit more. Yeah, let's go with right there. All right. Yeah, I like that. All right, so let's come down to here, and then we're going to do the same thing down here. And I'm hoping that's enough gap there that it leaves us just a little bit more wood there. Just so you know, I am not an expert in working with nodes. Like I said, there are a lot of tutorials. I really know just the very basics. Definitely not an expert when it comes to working with nodes. Now, we could arch this a little if we wanted. I think that might give them a little bit of a more real guy look. I'm going to do that down here. I'm going to put one in here. Since we widen that, I'm just going to arch it a little. That's all. And I'm done, okay? I don't want to mess with that anymore because I don't want to mess up the overall design. I'm pretty happy with that. It looks like our guy is well centered within his cutout, but I want to double check. So we got him here. And let's make sure. So that is centered left and right, up and down. When you see that little center box, it should be in the middle of our other object. So all our processes are turned on. We will double check our measurements, 11 by 14. That's good. We're going to go to process. All right, everything looks good to me. Alrighty, so we applied our changes. Everything's ready to go. Our fan's running. Let's hit start. And this is something you should always keep in mind too. Sometimes the best laid plans, no matter what you think you nailed everything and checked everything, sometimes things just do need a little bit of adjusting. And you can see that to really make this come out, I think, in a better way, I think making those small adjustments to the design, knowing what their intentions are here, that this is going to work better. We will see here if I move that design out just enough so that we're not getting that overburn on the underpits, I guess, or armpits of our little guy here. And yeah, that already looks better to me. Look at that. So just that moving it out, it looks like we haven't burned it up. And you can see he's starting to pop right out of there. And that looks good. Finishing up the cut on our Lego block man, and now it should start doing the 14 by 11 cutout. And I think this one's going to be a little bit better. We were right on that edge the last time. So here's our little Lego man, and I think that looks better than having the little slits that could easily break off. And there we go. Very nice. And now I'm just going to double check my measuring, make sure that was all correct. And let's see how well our kerf offset did. We are spot on. Look at that, guys. 11. Perfect. Let's check our other direction. By 14.0 exactly. So that 0.008 for my machine on the kerf offset on the cutting, you can see is absolutely perfect. And we are ready to contact this client and let them know that their project is ready to be picked up. All right, so let's do a little bit of math here. Our cost for the wood was $58.99. If we divide that by the 15 pieces in the pack, we come up with $3.93 per piece. Then we used 2 pieces. We had hoped to only use 1, but no big deal. We used 2. So our total cost was $7.86 for the 2 pieces that we used. We charged a total of $35 for this project. So if we subtract our $7.80 from that, we made roughly $27 profit on this job. Not bad.